NBC News reporting that, quote, inside a special closed-door Republican meeting on Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell cast doubt on an emerging deal to tighten immigration laws, citing GOP opposition to its provisions and telling senators that linking the two measures could also sink Ukraine aid. Senator McConnell adding that the politics on this have changed. Those politics are purely the desire to see Donald Trump reelected. NBC News adding that, quote, Trump's desire to wield chaos at the border as a political weapon against President Joe Biden in a general election campaign is a factor in the ongoing congressional negotiations. McConnell telling Republicans, we don't want to do anything to undermine him. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware and co-chair of President Biden's reelection campaign. Senator, thanks for being with us. I want to take this in two parts. First, let's talk about foreign aid. Then let's talk about immigration. When it comes to this aid, what are the stakes of an inevitable delay?
The stakes are incredibly high here, Alicia. The supplemental that President Biden sent to the Senate and asked us to pass now many months ago.
On December 28th, U.S. Border Patrol took more than 225,000 migrants who unlawfully crossed the border from Mexico into custody. That's from preliminary data. For much of the month, officials were wrestling with more than 10,000 migrants crossings a day. Those numbers capture a system that is completely overwhelmed and on their face seem to lend credence to 3 years of relentless attacks on this issue on the Biden administration.
The crisis at our border is a direct cause of Biden's dangerous and intentional policies.
Right now, America is being invaded.
Why is the border so broken? Because the policy choices of President Biden are not working.
The Biden regime absolutely has blood on its hands for their failure to secure our border.
It's a direct result of Joe Biden's failed policies.
Republican, Democrat, all across America pleading with President Biden to address this problem, and he refuses.
And that surge also comes with a devastating human toll. The UN named the treacherous trek to the border the world's deadliest land migration route after nearly 700 deaths were reported in 2022. And there's the financial cost as well, a cost that has Democratic mayors pleading for federal funding as they say the money will only continue to increase into the billions.
We are dealing with fundamentally a broken immigration system and one that has been in dire need of repair for more than 3 decades.
That, from Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, is not hyperbole. It is a very important element here. For decades, lawmakers have tried repeatedly and failed repeatedly to clinch any kind of wide-ranging agreement on what has become the most intractable issue in U.S. politics. In the last 20 years alone, major efforts have reached the precipice of passage. In 2005, in 2013, in 2018. Each time, they went up in flames, victim to hard-right fury over provisions Democrats viewed as essential in any deal. And that's what makes this moment in the current negotiations underway between a bipartisan group of senators so incredibly unique. Do you feel like where Democrats are on the policy, the willingness to make deals on specific issues has shifted dramatically over the course of the last several months because of the issues at the border you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it has shifted dramatically, and it should have shifted dramatically because of what's happened at the border.
That's Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, a key player in past talks, acknowledging just how far Democrats have moved on the policy. They have dropped key priorities like a pathway to citizenship or protections for undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. It's the same question I posed to Democratic Senator Chris Coons.
Yes, I think there's a willingness to reconsider the initial screening standard for asylum, for example, because so many people are now using the asylum process who ultimately, years later, after a court review, will be deemed ineligible for asylum. That's one of the biggest changes in recent years.
And that's also an issue that was never on the table before. Democrats now acknowledge there's a crisis at the border, and they also say they have shifted significantly on the policy, which means Republicans appear on the brink of the most significant border wins they've had in probably a generation. That's not my assessment. That's the assessment of the Senate Republican leader.
This week, Senator Langford and several colleagues continue their work to finalize the most substantial border security policy in 30 years. This agreement would come not a moment too soon.
Now, the Senator Langford McConnell is referring to is Jim Langford. And to be clear, he's an unquestionably conservative Republican who, given the urgency expressed by those in his own party, said this.
There's an expectation that Congress is going to actually do something and that we're not going to just wait around and to be able to hope things get better, but we're going to take the action to actually make things better.
Now, that expectation, to the extent Americans expect anything from their lawmakers at this point in time, is on the verge of being proven wrong because of things like this. Quote, a border deal now would be another gift to radical left Democrats. They need it politically, but they don't care about our border. That's Trump, not currently the president or even the actual Republican nominee yet, publicly undercutting Langford's efforts. And Trump's gone even further, lawmakers say, in private. And Republicans, the same Republicans who have made clear over and over and over again in hearings, in news conferences, in border visits, in political ads, just how much of a crisis this is, they're listening.
I'm encouraging President Trump to oppose the contours of the Senate deal such that I've seen it.
Which has led to a very sharp intra-party divide for the GOP.
Republicans in Congress blame each other over failed border security bills. A look at the bipartisan border deal and its demise. In a recent showdown on Capitol Hill, Senate Republicans blocked a bipartisan border deal and foreign aid package that aimed to address critical issues related to border security and immigration. The legislation, which had significant implications for the U.S. southern border, faced opposition from both House Republicans and former President Donald Trump. Let's dive into the details of the failed bill and the blame game that followed. The bipartisan border deal, key changes. The Senate's border deal and foreign aid package sought to implement strict limits along the U.S. southern border, a departure from decades-long protocol. Here are the key changes that were included in the bill. 1. Emergency authority to restrict border crossings. The bill introduced a new emergency authority that would allow the Homeland Security Secretary to restrict border crossings if daily average migrant encounters reached 4,000 over a one-week span. If this metric was met, migrants crossing the border unlawfully could be largely barred from seeking asylum. 2. Processing asylum applications at ports of entry. The legislation codified a policy requiring the government to process at least 1,400 asylum applications at ports of entry when the emergency authority was triggered. 3. Higher standard of proof for asylum seekers. The bill raised the legal standard of proof for passing the initial screening for asylum, potentially making it more difficult for asylum seekers to qualify. 4. Faster asylum processing. Timeline. The bill expedited the asylum processing timeline from years to 6 months. 5. New process for asylum claims. The bill introduced a process in which U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services would decide asylum claims without involving the immigration court system. However, this process did not apply to unaccompanied migrant children. The blame game. Following the bill's failure in the Senate, blame was cast in various directions. President Joe Biden criticized congressional Republicans during a fundraiser in New York, expressing disbelief at the situation on Capitol Hill. He attributed the bill's demise to former President Trump's interference, alleging that Trump had called and threatened lawmakers with retribution if they supported the package. Notably, the package also included additional American funding for Ukraine and Israel. The funding standoff. The Biden administration initially requested just over $13 billion from Congress to boost resources at the border. However, after Senate Republicans blocked the bipartisan bill, the national security package passed by the upper chamber omitted any funding specifically for border security. This standoff between the Biden administration and House Republicans highlights the challenges in finding common ground on immigration and border policy. Conclusion. The failed border security bills underscore the deep divisions within the Republican Party regarding immigration and asylum policies. As Congress grapples with these critical issues, finding bipartisan solutions remains a daunting task. The blame game continues, but the urgent need for comprehensive immigration reform persists.